Hey everybody, happy Sunday. Welcome to another episode of Crystals and Coffee. I've got a nice mug of matcha here. Today, I have a very dear friend of mine that's going to join us. And she and I were a really long time in the fashion industry, although she worked on a different side of the industry as a makeup artist. Lady, your hair's like a different color every time I see you.
It is every single time.
Keep me guessing.
That's what I'm
Gemini, you.
I know. I had it a really bright red, and then as it faded, it kind of faded to this more like pinkish tone, and I was like, oh, I like that. So then we did it intentionally next time.
I love it. I think you look beautiful.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate it. I washed it today, so it was kind of a special day. So I'm like, you know what? I'm going to get a washing today. So.
You know what? I did the same thing. I was like, I love and respect my friend Danielle so much. I'm going to wash my hair for her.
I appreciate it. I could feel that you were doing it. So honestly, that's why I did it. So thank you for the inspiration.
So I was talking about you before you came on. And all good things, lady. All good things.
Let's hear it.
So I started to give everybody a little rundown of who you are.
Okay.
And I started to mention just where we knew each other. Obviously, I don't work as a fashion stylist anymore. However, we met a long time ago in a land far, far away on set, and yes. I was styling and you were doing makeup. You still do makeup.
I do.
And Danielle is super fun and snarky and talented, and we just just hit it off right away and have been friends probably, I guess, for about 10 years.
Yeah, 10 years.
It's been that long.
It has.
Danielle, I hope, I put a little makeup on today. I hope I look respectable enough for you.
Look respectable. So right now I have mascara on for the people, and that's it. So, cause we were going to kind of talk about some tricks. So I didn't want to arrive with full face and, just kind of, so regardless, we can either do little demonstrations or we can answer questions, but So
I wanted to bring, so first of all, anybody listening who has makeup questions, Danielle has worked on music videos and commercials and TV and movies and celebrities and all the places, and she's very versed in all these things. Special effects makeup too. I think that's always super fascinating. And the reason I wanted you to come on was I started to think, obviously this is a platform to align the visual and the energetic and helping people feel good from the inside out. And, you and I are so used to being in situations where there's a camera and people are on camera or being filmed, that's just second nature to us. And I started to think about, since everybody's been in quarantine, that there's so many people out there that are now having to literally face the camera every day that have never done that.
Yeah.
And if you're looking at your mug and you're not feeling good, if you feel like shit, you're not performing great, and it's affecting your attitude and your sleep patterns and your confidence and all these things. So I thought it would be nice to have you come on and share with people things that they could do, easy things. They've got 5 to 20 minutes to get ready in the morning before they have to jump on that Monday AM Zoom call with all of their coworkers.
Right. And I'm so glad.
What do you think?
Yeah. Well, I'm so glad that you brought that up. If you kind of feel like shit, you're going to, perform like shit. And to me, makeup it's not about looking your best. It's about feeling your best. Right. So my version of me, when I'm, doing what I love to do, right. When I'm not at work, at the public, when I'm out playing in the desert, or, on hikes or whatever, it's that's where I feel more like me. But then there's the me where I need to show up to work and be professional and, have other people look at me like, oh, she's a makeup artist. I need to represent that. But there's a way to do you in a way where it still feels very comfortable, because you can, have on all the makeup, the amazing clothes. And if you don't feel like yourself, even if everyone's complimenting you, like, oh my gosh, you've never looked better, but you don't feel good, you're not going to, whatever compliment people give you, you're not going to hear it, right? Because you're not believing it yourself. So what I like to do, I'm kind of almost like, an anti-makeup, not, I won't say anti, but the opposite of most makeup artists, because I'm not like, here's all the makeup, put it all on your face at once. But I can certainly show you how to do that. But if you have like 3 things, you have 3 minutes, it's like, perfect. Let's work with that and go from there and make you feel like, nope, this is me. I'm not putting on a face. I'm showing my face. Right. So that's my approach to not only makeup for myself, but makeup for, my clients. So, before
you, show us all the tricks of the trade, if I'd ask you, like, somebody's, like you said, 3 things, like, what are the 3 things you need to kind of like show up with your face looking fresh for a Zoom call?
If we're talking makeup wise, I would say concealer.
Okay.
I for myself use the NARS, Radiant Creamy Concealer. I sent you some. You're going to get some in a couple of days. But there's a bunch of different kinds. Becca makes an awesome one. So concealer to kind of hide under eyes, just to brighten yourself, feel fresh. If you do have any little blemishes that have popped up that you kind of want to just mask, get rid of. That's kind of number 1. The next one is like a bronzer. This one is from a company called Hourglass. I like it because has a little bit of like a natural skin-like glow. So
I've never heard of them. Wait, what? It looks all like marbly. What is happening in there?
Yes, it is marbly. They also have a highlighter too. They have a bunch of different colors. It's nice because I don't know if you can see that. There we go.
I can't. Why is it marbly? Like the bronzer I have is just one
flat shade
color. Yeah. What's up?
The thing that I like about having kind of this marbled effect, there's also a little bit of like a rose in it that you're not quite seeing. Rose, a champagne, a bronze. What I like about that is it's not just so harsh on the skin. It kind of helps marry the highlights, the low tones. It kind of all puts it together for me. So I like it because it's for our everyday people. It's very buildable, very natural. It almost like it's like diffuses it. Does that make sense? So it's not so aggressive. Like,
it doesn't look like you have these like 2 streaks on your face.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
See, I learned something already, and I guess I'm going to have to turn my bronzer in and get what you were just peddling.
Well, and 2, it's also about application, because I could use a really like firm, we'll talk about brushes in a second, but it also depends on how you're applying it, because once you know what things are supposed to do, then you can kind of cheat what you're doing with them, right? You're like, oh, I know this tool does A, B, and C. I'm going to find a way to do A through Z, with it. Okay, so we've got concealer, bronzer, and then I feel like the most important thing, and I'm sure most people would agree, some mascara. Kind of let those lashes.
Yeah.
Those, if you just had 3 things, that's what I would pick. And that's why I'm only wearing mascara today, right now, is because that's my main thing. You can do like a whole face of makeup, and if you don't finish your lashes, I feel it looks a little undone, in my opinion.
Yeah.
So,
oh my God. Also, I got so excited when I saw you, I saw your face. Will you just like tell people who you are first? Like how the heck you got here? You're under normal conditions, you're flying all over the world doing fancy faces. Fancy face. Like just, you work for yourself. You're beautiful, you're amazing, you're talented, you're lovely, you're all the things. Like, how did you get here? How did you get to the kitchen that you're in right now?
The kitchen that I walked from my bedroom and sat down. So if we're talking literal, that's what I did. But okay, interesting. I'll make it quick.
No, we've got time.
Oh, well, so I grew up uber tomboy. Like I was the oldest in my family, so I didn't have an older sister to emulate, to be like, oh, wear this, do this. It was kind of, finding your own path. And I think my parents loved that I was a tomboy, because I wasn't trying to date the boys. I was trying to beat them in basketball and soccer, and I was out shooting snakes with them. It was just kind of like more of, that kind of vibe.
They're like, oh, we don't have to worry about that one.
Yeah, no, the biggest grief I feel like I ever gave them was having to put on a dress to go to church or an event. Like I was just like, that's not who I am. Like I knew that. I was like, that's not me. So, but I have a background in painting, drawing, anything creative, the arts, that was where my focus always was. I was just always coloring on something. It was just kind of my thing. So other than classes in high school, basically I'm a self-taught artist. I work in like charcoals and watercolor and just different mediums like that. But after high school, I went to college for graphic design because it's like, all right, this is the next step, right? You have to do more schooling, blah, blah, blah. But while I was there, it just didn't feel like me. It didn't feel organic. It was a little too clinical feeling, if that makes sense. Even though I was allowed to be creative and I was working, one-on-one with people trying to, and I love collaborating. But it just wasn't what I needed. So I'm about 20 at this point, 21? No, 20. And I remember I was walking through a bookstore. I was picking out some music and art magazines, and I come walking past this fashion section, and on the cover, this girl it was very like Photoshop. She was very pale. Her hair was platinum. The background was all platinum. So it was all just kind of very washed out white. But then she had on the most brilliant, just scarlet red eyeshadow. And I was like, it stopped me in my tracks, literally. And it was the first time I saw makeup as art. Does that make sense? Like totally. It wasn't like even, in films, you see characters, you see special effects, they've done all this work. But to me, I never read like makeup. Like my stepmom sold Mary Kay. And to me, like that's what makeup was. And it didn't have a place like in who I was. But as soon as I saw this red eyeshadow, it was just kind of an edgy way of beauty that I had never seen before. And I was always kind of like the punk rock girl, like I said, still a tomboy and just more concerned with like art and music. But all of a sudden it was like consuming my brain. And so I went on a quest for red eyeshadow. So I remember going to like the makeup counters at the mall. Cause I'm like, well, that's the first place to start. Right. And they all looked at me like I was crazy. Like, so this is back though in like,
because MAC didn't exist yet.
No, MAC did, but they were they were kind of lesser known. This was like 2000. So okay. It was, but it didn't have all like the trend lines, like the new up and coming artistry lines, I guess I would say.
Yeah.
So it was kind of like you had to search it out a little bit more. And so everyone was like, no, we don't have that. We don't have that. And so I was like, well, I'll make my own. So I would use, just a lip liner, lipstick. And so when I started wearing makeup, it was like more of a statement, right? It wasn't to feel pretty, but it was to feel like myself. So I'm like, well, if this is going to be an expression, I want to express like who I am. So, and then that went to like an acid green eyeshadow. It went to, but it just was never really about beauty, but just expression. And so, but I couldn't get out of my head, this tomboy who only cared about very non-girly things was all of a sudden obsessed with makeup. And so I went out to a little course in Los Angeles just to learn some basics. Like, okay, if this is something I want to do or can do as a career, like, how do I get my start? So it was like a 5-day course. It was a nightmare. It was like,
wait, why?
Our teacher, like, she would show us something and go sit in her room the entire day. She showed up in the morning for like 20 minutes. Aww. And then she brought in this photographer that wore like only like Mickey Mouse clothes. Like, but he was like super high fat. I don't know. But then she tricked us into like having to buy our portfolio. Nowhere in like the student statement was it like, hey, you're going to get, it was always like, you're going to get these photos, but then you had to pay like $300 to get them. And it was kind of more for me, an example of like what not to do if I'm wanting to go out and learn. Right. But I came back, my very first job that I had was on a short film with a group of college students. So I worked for 3 days, for free, just, building up like some experience, like kind of building my kit. I remember going to Walmart and just buying like $100 worth of like CoverGirl and Wet n Wild, just the basics to kind of like, all right, I need to mix and match and, kind of source it out that way. And then that film ended up winning Best Short Film at the Slam Dance Film Festival that year. And so my very first gig, I got to see my name in credits, and that was pretty neat experience. I was like, oh. But then I worked for MAC because they did open one in the area that I live in, Orem, Utah. And so I worked for them for about 6 years. And that was amazing because it was so much hands-on training, right? Like so many people that I worked with would complain because they would have people walk up. They just wanted their makeup done. We knew they weren't going to buy anything. They just wanted to sit in the chair, get pampered for a minute, and then go get their churro, at pretzel time. And to me, though, I loved it because it was free practice. I was like, no, I get to work with every skin tone, every age group, every like problem as far as like acne goes or birthmarks or things like that. So I was always the one like, no, come see me. Like, I'm going to, play all day. Cause it was, I'm getting to play with color and texture and interact with new people all day. So to wrap it up, after that, I opened my own makeup school, partnered with an aesthetic school. They were looking to start their, like a program for themselves. So I guess it wasn't my own, but it was my own program underneath their umbrella. And that was amazing. Taught for about 4.5 years. At the same time, I started transitioning back to freelance. So I started working for commercials, films, Runway, which is where I met you, on the road. And that's all I do now still. So I'm totally self-employed, independent. I'm currently working on a film, just like a local project. Did a commercial for granola earlier this week. Look out for that. But it's fun. Yeah. It's great because I get to show up to work every day. And honestly, the biggest thing about my job that I love is the problem solving aspect, because there's so many things that directors or people expect you to want to do without having had those conversations beforehand. So it's right. Like, okay, how do I get to create this using things that don't exist right now and just make it work? So it makes it frustrating sometimes, but at the end of the day, when you pull it off, you're just kind of like, all right, and you get to feel a little pride about it.
Yeah. I always call that, that moment, I'm like reminiscing back, the Santa's magic bag syndrome, where, as you have a client, you're preparing for this photo shoot. It could be weeks, it could be months. They want to do this thing. And then, you either get the call or everybody comes into the room and is like, so we were thinking on the way over, we want to do something completely different than what we've told you for the last 2 weeks.
Yeah, exactly.
And, it can really fucking throw you for a loop.
Absolutely. Like, I'll have jobs too. And these tend to be on like the lower budget things where, they're like the wardrobe department, they'll have one shirt or one pair of shoes that needs to have like a blood spat or something happen, but then the next thing it needs to be clean. And I remember there was a job where a man had fallen asleep next to a fire, ruining his shoes. And it was kind of like the last straw. So his shoes needed to look burned, but they didn't think about like, oh, well, how are we going to do that and film the stuff that happened before that? And so I remember finding like the dirt makeup that I had and Vaseline and mixing up like a soot charred kind of like 3D kind of look with makeup essentially to make these boots, which, that's wardrobe or props. That's not even my world. But to me, that's kind of the stuff that I live for. Like, as pissed as I am in that second, like, damn you for not doing your job and making me care about it more. But then to kind of be the one that figures it out, it's a little rewarding and kind of fun.
So you're like a makeup MacGyver of sorts.
Totally. Yeah,
that's who you are.
Yeah, give me a paperclip, a rubber band, and a cucumber, and you're gonna look like Cindy Crawford.
Amazing.
Yeah.
So Danielle, you actually just brought something interesting up. You just in passing just said, oh, I just worked on a granola commercial. Mm-hmm. And I'm sure someone's like, what the hell is that girl doing there? I think it's like, people don't realize that clothing and makeup go places that you don't think about. So why the heck were you on a granola commercial?
So there's a cowboy in this granola commercial who's kind of doing like the speech for, it's like he's like talking to the camera, kind of breaking the fourth wall kind of thing. And anyway, there's parts of it where it's a comical thing, where all of a sudden he needs to look kind of like dirty because he's rugged. He's out throwing bales of hay, but it's like, so it's interesting. It's kind of like a clean, dirty look, right? Like, you don't want him to actually just go and put dirt on, because it's strategic dirt is what I call it. But he also needs to look sweaty or, like, so a lot of it is actually making people look worse, which I actually really enjoy. But then, there's a little girl that's there and she needs to have like some rosy cheeks and freckles that don't exist and little stuff that you wouldn't think of that all, come together. It's all a collaboration.
What do you think is the weirdest job you've gotten called to? Like, that you're like, why am I there? And then you're like, oh
my gosh, weird. I mean, it makes sense to have makeup on certain things where it's like, oh, they could have gone without that. It was simply just more grooming. Like, if it's men, it tends to be more of a grooming thing. And so you can kind of get away without it. The weird factor comes in, like, just all the different elements at play where you're just looking around like, what in the actual hell is happening? And I was on a film one time where I was the only female. There were about 16, 18 men. It was because it was this war film. Every day, I'm just like almost breaking up fist fights between the writer and the director and the actor. And it was, it's just kind of like, oh my gosh, like this isn't my job. But
you were also a mediator.
Yeah.
I think you definitely,
you're like the Boy Scout of everything. They expect you to have all the tools. And so the stuff that you keep in your set bag, you're like, why do you have that? And it's like, well, someone's going to ask for it. And it ends up coming in handy. I'm sure you're the same, with your wardrobe. I've seen your suitcases. Yeah.
You've been in my suitcases.
I've been in your suitcases.
We've gotten in a couple of them because they're so large.
It's true.
I think it brings up a really interesting point because, Danielle and I we're fortunate enough to work together so often, but it's also, they're jobs that go hand in hand, wardrobe and makeup, and always kind of lumped together, I think.
Totally.
And I think it's interesting, either when someone would come into my wardrobe room or come and sit in your makeup chair, that, there'd be such a moment of therapy there for the model that comes to sit down. And, it was whether, they felt self-conscious in what they had on, or something was going on with the photographer, or something was going on with them, at home. But as soon as they come in there, it's like a therapy session.
Yeah. It's you. Yeah. And I think that says a lot too, because I know fellow hairstylists or makeup artists where that isn't always the case, but you're obviously very empathic, and I tend to be as well. And so I think people kind of are just drawn to that, and then they just dump all this stuff on you, and you're like not that you can fix it, but the best thing you can do is just listen to it, and then kind of take a deep breath once they step out of the chair, and then the next one comes in. And it's nice though, because I think it's important, as someone who's working so closely with models or actors, it's like they're putting themselves out there to do their craft, and it's our job to help them achieve that the best that we can. And so if taking those few minutes, even just to listen to what they have to say or unload, or just be that safe space, it ends up being the majority of the time. And I really enjoy that. And it's important to me to kind of cultivate that vibe and that feeling when they're in my space, even if it's stressful. Like when we were doing the shows together, we have microseconds to do something, pull off these crazy looks, crazy outfits, send these girls down the runway. And then at the end, we just look at each other and we're like, how did we just do that? But at the same time, even though we may feel stressed, never placing that onto the people who are in our chair or in our wardrobe area. It's kind of a skill, but again, it goes along with that problem solving that I don't think everyone can do.
Yeah. No, nobody realizes how chaotic a fashion show is behind the scenes. I had a model by accident. She had a quick change when she came off the runway and lost her balance, and accidentally I was switching her shoes and she kicked me in the fucking face, and I was knocked out.
Fully knocked out?
Just for a little bit, yeah. But by accident.
Well, as long as you went for a little bit, you're fine.
But just a little bit. Just you actually just I'm not surprised you're working again, but I'm only a little I'm curious just because of everything that's still going on with COVID, and I'm just wondering, especially if there's anybody that kind of works in the fashion and beauty industry from that area, what's happening on the set that you were on, with wearing masks, and how's it working right now out there?
That's the interesting thing, is obviously the actors in my chair, they're not wearing masks because I'm needing to work on their face. So I'm wearing a mask. I'm wearing a plastic bag over my head.
Oh, you are? Okay.
It's all the things, but I'm as far as the measures I'm taking, I wear gloves, new sets of gloves in between each person. I'm also sanitizing. I have extra sanitary precautions as far as whenever I do makeup, everything's disposable, right? Like a mascara, you use a disposable wand once, you're done with it, So, but that's even more the case. Even if I touch a brush, everything goes in its own pile to be disinfected, sanitized, clean, extra thoroughly. So I know that I'm doing my part to make sure that my space is a clean space when someone enters it. However, I have to just trust and hope that they've brought on people who have done the same things for themselves, because literally they're like, oh, we're coming to set. We're keeping it a small crew. There's only 20 people there. Everyone will stay 6 feet away. And it's like, bitch, I can't be 6 feet away. I'm right there in your face.
Yeah.
You know? So
that's right.
Yeah. So I just kind of, I do as much as I can for myself and hope that people have taken precautions and have stayed safe beforehand. So they take like temperatures every day. They make you go through a checklist of stuff. Like, have you, been around this? And you just hope people are being truthful. So I know it's a scary thing, because it's nice to go back to work, but it's also, you're putting yourself on the line by being in contact with everyone. So, and it's like, is X amount of dollars worth it to just go back to work for a paycheck? But, things have to keep on moving. So, yeah.
I was just curious, because that is such, mentally, physically, and emotionally, a set is a very tight knit crew of people, because you work long hours together. There's tons of people there. You're on top of each other. Like you said, you're the in everybody's face girl, because you have to be. Yeah. So it's a really interesting environment to have to go back to when the world is living 6 feet apart from each other.
Totally. For sure. Yeah. And it's, myself and the, wardrobe and hair are the three pretty much, and the sound guy who's in charge of miking everyone up. But otherwise, everyone can maintain their space. And, instead we're kind of like right there. But it makes it feel very, what's the word that I want to use? Like, just small, because it's still very serious, but it's like, we're not in a hospital, we're doing very kind of, I don't know, things that like they matter. It's still a craft. It's a profession, but it's like, when I feel like the masks are uncomfortable because I'm wearing, 13 hours yesterday, other than quick breaks to take them off. But it's like, no, I'm not putting myself trying to heal people and trying to like cater to the sick and do things like that. So it kind of helps you put it in check to maintain like a level of gratitude, where it's like, no, this is a choice that I get to do, and it's a creative choice. And I'm grateful that I get to be doing it, and even more grateful to the people who have to be doing it. Right. So into that, out of respect, you take as many measures as you can to just make sure you're healthy, and for the sake of everyone else. It's a very small step of kindness I think you can do for the people who it actually really, really matters for.
I love that. What's
the Jesus Christ, amen.
What did you say?
I said, in the name of Jesus Christ, amen.
What is the weirdest thing you've ever had to I'm going to say cover up or alter? Because I remember sometimes like there'd be a blemish or something in a weird place, and I'd hear the whoever was in charge was like, go back to makeup and blah blah blah, and I was like, oh, that's not even a face.
Yeah, okay, I know exactly what it is. So I was working on a commercial for a mattress company. They had brought in 2 sumo wrestlers from Japan. One man weighed, it was close to 700 pounds. The other guy was 500 pounds. And just because of their bodies, their actions, their mobility that they're doing, we've all had it, kind of like acne in places that isn't, normally people don't see though. But from about their inner thigh all the way around, it was almost like they were wearing a diaper of acne. But they're wearing those little sumo, forgive me, I forget what they're called, but the little kind of cloth diaper things. But they didn't want to be able to see that on set. So, Colleen, I'm on my knees in a 650-pound man's crotch, airbrushing away like acne scars and like active acne, just so it looks nice. And it's just laughable. But I also got to play with kittens that day, because there was a scene with kittens. So it's like,
Wait, so there were sumo wrestlers and kittens on set?
Yeah.
I've got to look up this commercial.
It was for Purple mattresses. I don't remember the name of it, but
I know what you're talking about.
Yeah.
That brand, the Purple brand, they were at, I was doing crystal readings at the last Create and Cultivate in LA, and they're the Purple, because they're from Utah.
Yeah, they are.
I was talking to them.
15 minutes away. Yeah, I've done a lot of their ads, actually. They have moved on and they kind of created like their in-house people that work for them now kind of do all their commercials. But for a while they brought in independent contractors. So I've done quite a few of their spots, and they were always some of my favorites to work with, because it was a little bit more wacky and fun. And, it wasn't just make these people look pretty. It was, challenging, but in a lot of fun, different ways. So yeah, but airbrushing crotches of very large man. It was one of the weirdest.
I have one last question about your craft, and then I'll let you show us how to do it for the Zoom. As far as like, what's the craziest special effects makeup moment you've had?
Okay. So there was a web series that I worked on called Dr. Fubulous. It was with 𝗨𝗨𝗡. Danny Trejo was in it. A famous YouTuber named 𝗨𝗨𝗙. She's very funny. But Nutty Professor style, every single day for 2 weeks, I would put a fat mask that was molded to 𝗨𝗨𝗙's face. So another special effects artist from Utah, his name's Chris Hansen, very talented. He took they call it a live cast. So pretty much, they're making a bust of your face, and then he sculpted and created this fat mask that started right below, like right along your cheekbones, and then went down to your chest. So we molded it, but it was kind of again, not a ton of budget for the shoot. So I think for like 10 shooting days, they were able to make 5 masks. So you had to reuse them. So you had to pull this giant mask over her head. And then it's the process of making it so there's no seam is so tricky, because you're creating another 3D surface on top of a, current 3D surface, and getting those to marry is probably the most technical and tricky part. But then it was the colored latex sponges that you get from just the grocery store. It's just kind of like an ivory color. 𝗨𝗨𝗙 has beautiful dark mocha skin. And so it was also really fun, because then you had to match this latex color with makeup to match her skin tone flawlessly. And it probably took about 3 hours every day, but it also took about 2 hours to take off, because then we had to be able to reuse that mask again. So that was it was a very challenging job, but it was honestly very fun, because I got to spend, all day, every day with this woman who's hilarious and just such a warm, it helps when you get to be with people that you just connect with. And so it was challenging, but honestly so much fun. So special effects wise, that's probably up there.
So how do you clean the inside of a special effects mask? Like, what are you cleaning that with?
You've got alcohol. There's different cosmetic sanitizers that we would just spray, but where it was just going back on her own skin, we just would dry it out, sanitize it with some alcohol, wipe it down, let it air dry kind of on a little sculpture thing. But that's something you wouldn't reuse from person to person. That's her own special mask. So yeah.
Wow.
Those appliances, are kind of like a one and done type thing. So, but it's fun. It's fun to kind of have everything from, something that extreme where you're doing that level of special effects makeup, as well as just basic beauty, grooming, runway stuff. That's my favorite part about my job, is how varied it is.
Good for a Gemini.
Yeah. Triple Gemini.
You're a triple Gemini.
Central, yeah.
Tell me more. What do you know?
Much more. You'll have to tell me more about it. I just know that much.
Well, Geminis are full of duality in the very best way, and I say this with respect. They're two-faced, not in that way, but like you see very much like one version of a personality, and then they can totally turn around and surprise you with something else, right? So somebody could, you think very stereotypically, like somebody seems like a airy fairy kind of airhead, head in the clouds type of person, and then they turn around and they're like, no, actually I'm like leading a TED talk right now, blah 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 blah, and I'm a astrophysicist and blah 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 blah. So you see very like this surprising personality, or two sides.
Well, I feel like, to me, that it kind of goes along with what you do working with so many different people. And to me, it's kind of, the description is pretty perfect, but I feel like there's also that huge gray area in between, where it's so much about adaptability, right? Like you're kind of able to like shape shift depending on the situation, which I feel like adaptability is like the most important thing, not even just in careers or industry, but just life in general.
Well, even, makeup, what you do, like, it feels like such a good Gemini career, because somebody comes in and they're, purest raw form, and then they look at you and they're like, okay, make them this, this character or this shape or this, whatever it might be. And so you completely help to shape shift and transform them. It makes sense. It probably makes sense to your brain.
Yeah. It's one of those things.
Obviously, I'll turn them into something else today.
Yeah.
Poof.
Yeah. And it's fun. And it's interesting too. I mean, what comes naturally to one person might be the hardest thing for someone else, but they're doing, astrophysics, and it's, it's just like, how do you wrap your brain around that? So I love it. I'm so fascinated by just how many people have so many amazing skills that it's like, I could never learn that.
Yeah.
But it's fun.
Okay. Well, we digressed for a good 38 minutes and went all over the place. Love it. So I'm hoping, anybody that's just joining right now, and you can always ask Danielle on the feed any makeup questions in the entire world about makeup.
Yes.
But we're talking about, just because everybody's on Zoom right now, and 99% of the world 6 weeks ago didn't have to face getting on camera every day for their job.
Right.
So Danielle was kind enough to come on and to offer some simple things that you could do so that you just feel like you're shining and your best when you have to get on your work meetings on Monday morning.
Yeah.
So lady, What do we need to do?
Okay. So one thing that I really advise that's kind of more like ahead of time and just kind of throughout life, skincare, I think is huge. So, the better you can take, or the better care you can take of like your skin, obviously the less makeup you have to wear, the less you have to like cover up or things like that. So to me, skincare is huge. But when you're talking, you've got to hurry a quick call and you haven't, had time to prep or whatever, it's kind of more about like in the moment, what we can do to kind of, make sure things are looking great. So like I said, concealer to me is one of like your first trick. But be quick though, before going into makeup, I think creating a space with good lighting, good atmosphere, again, is going to help as well, because you can have a totally flawless face, but if you're in a very shadowed area or dim lit, or you only have one lamp from a direction, it can make things look very shadowed and not very flattering. So if you can get to natural light, that's going to be your best friend. Right now I'm in front of our big bay window. And I also have this really cool like makeup mirror that my boyfriend got me that has a little selfie phone attachment that I've never actually used until now. So it's kind of pretty cool, but it just creates like a more even light. But if you don't have the option to have anything like that, natural lighting directionally is going to be kind of your best friend, because good lighting also helps kind of mask and, hide a little bit more imperfections. But anyway, do you want me to actually like do my makeup while I tell you about stuff?
Maybe a little bit, because like how much, with concealer, how much do you put on? Where are the hot spots that you want to hit? Like, cause I know I've glopped concealer on it and like, then it didn't go right, Danielle.
We'll talk later. One thing, okay, so here's how I like to do things. Like you said, if you only have a few minutes to get ready, but you usually know ahead of time, like, oh, I've got, a call at 9 a.m. the next day. So what I like to do is I'll wake up, put on like my skincare. So I have like an exfoliator. I'll show you. So this one is it's a company called Paula's Choice, and it just kind of helps get rid of all the dead skin cells. I'll start with that, and then I'll use, have you ever heard of 𝗭𝗲𝗧?
Yes.
It's like an all organic. I'm obsessed. Like it's
what are you doing with that?
This one is like a retinol face oil.
Okay.
So I just like a couple little drops here, just kind of blend it in. Oils are going to help kind of bind to your moisturizer and help it to work better, because it helps it absorb into the skin better. So then I also use, this is like an illuminating moisturizer that I like. So oils over cream? It kind of a time and a place thing. Okay. I like an oil. My skin tends to be a little bit more dry. I'm in Utah. It's a very dry climate, even though I drink nothing but, water all day. But it just kind of helps. You can use a very little amount. And to me, it feels very hydrating. And it just kind of, to me, sometimes creams feel like they're sitting on the skin, or oils to me feel like they're actually penetrating a little bit more. And as they do so, then they're kind of pulling whatever else is on top of it down with it. So that's why I use an oil first and then my moisturizer. You don't want to use too much. And if you have oily skin, maybe only at night. So that's where it kind of gets a little bit tricky, because it's different skin tones, right? And what's going to work best for your skin. That's just what I found for myself, is a little bit of that oil with a little bit of a moisturizer. But what I do is I'll do that first. I'll go make my juice. I'll go, get dressed, I'll do all that stuff and kind of give it a few minutes to kind of sit, because you don't want it too like greasy feeling. And I don't want to make that sound bad, because if you're using great products, it's not going to be greasy, but you know what I'm talking about. Like, it just has that very like hydrated feeling. And sometimes if you're putting your like concealer on, your powder, it's going to grab and go like too much, because it still has that like moisturized surface. Like if you were just to put a powder on right over an oil, it's going to make that powder just like really grab onto it and kind of oxidize it a little bit darker. Where if you have a little bit more of just a lightly moisturized skin, you're going to be able to distribute it a lot more evenly. Does that make sense?
It does make sense.
Okay. So I let it sit like while I'm kind of prepping for the rest of the day. And that way, by the time that you go in to kind of sit and do your makeup, you're kind of primed and ready to go. I'm going to use my little hand mirror. So I'm going to take my concealer, and I find, the older that I get, I feel like the less makeup I can use, the better my skin looks. That's why I was saying too, skincare is just super important, because if you can just let your skin look great, you don't really need tons of makeup. But anyway, so I'm just going to use my little wand. And what I do is I kind of use like little 3 dots, kind of, I'll get up close so it's crazy, kind of right in the inner corner of the eye, middle, and kind of outside. I'm not bringing it down too much. You can use a brush to blend if you want. I always just use my finger. And so I'm just going to like press it into the skin. So this spot on people, that kind of tends to be your most hollow point on your face and can catch the most shadows. So make sure you're getting it right in there, blending it out, kind of blending it down onto the chin as well.
We have a question.
Let's hear it.
I have a question, and then Michelle Lee has a question too. First of all, what is the best skincare for dark circles?
Okay. Skincare for dark circles, it kind of depends on what your needs are. If it's like a puffy dark circle, there are products out there that have caffeine that help with blood circulation, that help with smoothing out the skin kind of before you put a concealer on. Anything that's hydrating, that's going to plump up that area more with like hyaluronic acid, is going to kind of feel like it's doing almost like a pre-work, right? So then your concealer can just kind of smooth it out. So trying to think, like MAC makes, it's called Fast Response Eye Cream. It has caffeine in it, and it just kind of helps with blood circulation. You can also use like the jade roller tools are amazing, because they help they're like a nice cool stone, and they help, you can use the rose quartz as well, but just helps smooth out the area a little bit more. So a couple minutes of that morning and night kind of will help with that. But for a concealer, depending on how dark they are, undertones make a huge difference. You kind of go to the color wheel. So if you've got like more of a purple undertone with your dark circles, you can use like a color correcting concealer, something that has more of like a yellow, because when you're looking color wheel, opposites are going to neutralize. So purple, if you put a yellow on top of it, is going to help neutralize the purple, but then you need to go over it with a skin tone concealer to get rid of the yellow. Same thing with like a lot of my Middle Eastern clients, they tend to get the really dark circles. And with them, there's actually a really bright, almost like orangey coral that I put on first that totally counteracts like any of the darkness, but then I use their skin tone on top of that to counteract the orange. So it's kind of like almost like a filler color. So, you can find those easily. Go into a makeup counter if you can. If you can't find anything online with research, that's of course when things open back up. But otherwise, I think finding great, like staying hydrated, I think also really helps too. So I know that's kind of a broad answer. It's not very direct. The other thing too is you can always email me, and I can do kind of private consultations too. That's something I do. So my email address is just my handle, Danielle, and then the letters xo@gmail.com. So feel free you can send me an email and we can set something up too. If there's more,
she will style your face. I've had it done, and it was amazing.
I love.
Very lucky.
I love doing your makeup. It's fun.
Okay, that kind of also answered my questions there.
Okay.
Because she was asking about dark circles, and you were saying to go opposite on the color wheel. Literally kind of took this out of my mouth, because I was, you just informed me about something, because in my head, I was kind of like, I want like a lighter shade under my eyes as opposed to like what my skin actually looks like.
Right,
It's going to know.
Yeah. Well, you kind of go about like a half shade later. You don't want it to be too light. You're going to get that raccoon eye look. But if it's your same skin tone, it doesn't have that brightening effect. And we just want to brighten up a little bit more. So this is about like, I don't know if you can see, like you can see that's definitely lighter than my skin tone. If I were to put that all over, I was going to look cakey. But since I'm using it underneath my eyes, we're okay.
Okay. All right.
So a little bit lighter, about half a shade to a shade lighter. So, and like I said, I love using my finger just because I can really like pat it in there, get kind of right up to the lash line. You don't want anything too heavy. That's why I like something more hydrating. If it's too dry, it's going to look cakey. It's going to sit in, even if you're not old, everyone has little tiny fine lines in their skin, and it's going to kind of find its way to sit in there. Where if you have your skin nice and hydrated and then use a little bit more of a hydrating concealer, it's going to help not sit in those little lines and draw attention to it.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So we have our concealer on.
Concealer.
Step 2, lady.
Well, this is concealer part 2. So this is actually a cream concealer. This one is more my skin tone. I had a couple from wearing masks all day. I've been getting little blemishes around like my chin and nose area. So this, I've got kind of just some little red dots, very minimal. I'm not going to use this everywhere. This is just more of a spot treatment. Again, I'm just using my finger because I can just apply it and blend it in.
But if you were at work, you would be using the little like makeup sponge thingies.
Mm-hmm. On someone else, when you're using concealer, anything that's more of like a firm, like flat tipped brush, this one's kind of, it's seen better days, but the more firm a brush is, the more product it's going to deposit. The more fluffy a brush is, the more it's going to blend. So if you know this is kind of a like gnarly little guy that I need to cover, you're going to use kind of a more firm brush to really like coat it on there. And then you can either use that same brush and buff it out, or use a clean fluffy brush and just kind of blend around the edges to help it fade into each other.
Oh,
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I'm sure everyone's had times where they want to, they have a really pretty eyeshadow color and then they're trying to apply and it just isn't, it feels like it's either falling off and sitting on your skin or it's not showing up. It could be the brush and it could be that you're not using anything underneath to grab it, but just keep in mind that like the more dense, firm, it's going to apply more, fluffy, blend.
Okay.
Thank you. So, yeah, of course. Now, one thing you can do too, without looking shiny, that next step, like the spot treatment, just kind of go around. If there's any blemishes, find where you need to go. The other thing, if you're using a liquid foundation, do that. In my opinion, I feel like if you do that first, you're kind of saving yourself some time, because if your foundation has a good coverage, you might not need to do all the little spot treatment, right? The foundation might do it for you. And if you're using a brush or a sponge or something, you might end up kind of like wiping off that first step you did as you go. So if you know you're using a liquid foundation, do that first. And then if there's anything like kind of left over, then go ahead and spot treat from there. So on my skin, like I said, for myself, just being more of an active person and, not liking to spend a ton of time on makeup for myself, I tend to use just like a powder foundation. It's kind of silly. I don't know if you've ever heard of this company called Mineral Fusion. They've started selling it at Target now, at least the one here in Utah that I've been to. But I just use a kind of a dense powder brush, again, because it's going to deposit. And rather than using a powder foundation, I just kind of, all I'm doing is just kind of knocking away shine. But just pretty easy. Like, that's all I want to do for myself. Yeah. It's never that quick when you're doing someone else's makeup, though. It's just, but I just kind of hit my high planes just because I want it to look a little bit more smooth. Even if there was anything totally crazy, I might go for a little bit more coverage. But to me, I love this. It's clean. I know if I'm sweating or working all day, I'm not putting anything else on my face that's going to be clogging my pores, things like that. So I just am using a super quick foundation. There's a new foundation though that's, I think, 𝗭𝗢𝗎. I apologize. I'm not sure the name, but this has an SPF of 40. It also has hyaluronic acid in it, and it's a pretty lightweight texture. I'll just show you on the back of my hand. It's like pretty liquidy, but this, you can see it like dripping. It blends super, super well. So if I were to do a foundation, because this has a sunscreen, it's all very natural. It has you can see the glow. It's like a nice glow. Really, really love that. So
and it's like a 2-for-1.
Yeah, 2-for-1.
I love a 2-for-1.
2-for-1. Saves
time.
Exactly. Okay, so then my next step would be, I was showing you my fun little bronzer earlier.
Yeah.
I like a brush like this. It's kind of like a dual fiber brush where it's synthetic. For cream blushes, it's amazing. However, I'm just using our powder right now. I kind of like to use a bronzer a little bit in a contour fashion as well, not too crazy. So when you're finding your cheek contour, a little bit closer, pretend there was a light shining directly over my head. You could kind of see where it would hit, right along here. I'm trying to find so you don't want it too low. Pretend there's a dotted line that comes across the bottom of your nose.
Okay.
And then you don't really want it to carry down too far there. It can lightly blend its way down, lightly fade, but that's going to kind of drop things down. And makeup's all about trickery and illusions. We want to keep it lifted. So what I like to do is, using my brush, kind of press into the cheekbone. And you can do it dry so you can kind of feel where it goes. If you were to press in and up, it's kind of creating a little ledge almost. And once you're familiar with it, you kind of can just eyeball it. But since it's a bronzer, it's going to give us a little contour, but I'm also blending it up because a bronzer, the sun's going to hit kind of the higher planes of your face, right? So I'm just letting it travel up a little bit. The other thing too, that little line I just showed you, your imaginary dotted line, pretend that comes down the center of your pupil as well. And you want your blush to kind of have finished blending by the time it gets, blush or bronzer, by the time it gets to that point. Because if the color carries in too much, it's going to close in that space. So we want to keep it open and lifted.
Okay.
Okay. I saw there was a little question.
You've got a couple questions here.
Well, I'll answer the one about the liquid foundation. That's kind of, to me, there's a lot of preference there. I'm sure you guys have all seen little beauty blenders like this. You just soak it, get it wet. That actually, I love these because they give a very skin-like appearance because they're helping to marry the foundation into the skin. My only issue with this or any other sponge, they do absorb a lot of your product. So you're kind of using more product than you typically would need if you weren't using your fingers or a synthetic brush, something like this that could even be a little bit larger, or even my flat powder brush, you could kind of buff it in. So there you've got options: brush, sponge, beauty blender, or your fingers. Sometimes I feel the fingers kind of move things around more than helping them sit in. So I like to use kind of a fluffy but firm. This is kind of in between. I was talking about the difference between fluffy and firm. This kind of puts it on, but also helps you blend it in at the same time. So I prefer a brush when I'm working on films. I tend to use a brush. However, when I'm working on photo shoots or runway, I actually do use a beauty blender because it makes it so much more skin-like. Where film, you kind of end up using a little bit more foundation. So it's a case-by-case thing. For daily use, I would think whatever feels most organic to you. I know plenty of artists that only use their fingers, but then might use a brush to kind of blend in any lines. So, and it also depends on the type of foundation too. Powder foundation, you're obviously going to use a brush. If you wanted a more full coverage with a powder foundation, a sponge, because again, it's that dense, so it's going to apply it a lot more.
Cool.
That makes sense? I know that's a lot of info.
No, that's wonderful. Thank you.
Yeah, of course. Was there another question that I missed?
There is. Maybe you can answer it while you're doing another. Do we have another step, lady? Or are we good to go? Okay. Yeah. So somebody asked more of a general industry question. Do you think that problem solving is something you can learn on the job, or is that a talent you need to start out with in the makeup industry?
I will answer that. One other question, or one other thing too. I kind of have a larger forehead. So I like to put bronzer even a little, almost at my hairline and kind of bring it down because it adds a little kind of, I don't know, kind of brings
a halo, arc, a forehead halo.
But you don't want, if you're doing that, you don't want it to be too shimmery because then it's just going to accentuate it. You'd want to use more of a matte bronzer. Oh, that's the thing. I'll answer the problem solving question. A huge thing about foundations, powders, bronzers is texture. Okay. So if you're someone who has problem skin, right? You've had either cystic acne, you have some scarring, you've got things like that where texture is a concern. You're going to want to go with something that has a more matte finish. If you were to look at a wall that has been painted and it's totally matte, it's going to help hide any little imperfections, the textures that are on the wall, because the light is absorbed with the lack of sheen. So it's going to make it look a lot more smooth. The more shiny something is, it's going to reflect every little bump, every little, nick that you're going to see on the wall. So kind of take that when it comes to your skin. So if you're someone who needs to hide any like blemishes, or if that's a concern of yours, you've got a little bit more acne, use something that has no shine to it, because that matte is going to diffuse the light, making it look more smooth for you. So you can use less product by kind of tricking it with texture. So, and if you want that glowy skin look, you can do it, like selectively. Like if you've got, if you don't have any of those concern areas on your cheekbones, add a little highlight on your cheekbones to get that like radiant look, while the rest of your skin can be really matte and pretty. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes total sense.
But something that when you're picking out a foundation for yourself, keep in mind like the type of look you're trying to achieve, as well as what your concerns are for yourself.
Okay. So Danielle, IG is going to kick us off in 2 minutes. So you have to look at it this way. You got 2 minutes till your Zoom call starts. So what's the last thing that somebody needs to do?
Okay. So like I was saying, you want to do something that makes you feel like yourself. Cover up any imperfections that you feel there are. Add a little bit of warmth with bronzer. Find a good lip color. I'm going to do right now, like a hint of color is going to give you a little bit more of a fresh look. This is a gloss from the brand 𝗀𝗢𝗙𝗧 or 𝗀𝗀𝗙𝗧, however you say it. Something that's going to give like a stain, a little bit of color. It tends to kind of add a little bit of like brightness, right? Without having to even really do a lot of eyeshadow or liner. It kind of, I don't know. It's something that is a quick little bonus to just make you look more put together. Lipstick would be a good little hack there.
Okay. So let's see. I think overall, like what I heard you tell me was good moisturizer, covering up the dark circles, bronzers to sculpt.
Yeah, to kind of sculpt and add warmth for sure.
And light up your lip and maybe a little mascara, and you're like ready to go.
Mascara is mascara is the perfect kind of like accessory. You can add a little bit of a liner if you really want to define your eyes and make them stand out. But right now I just have mascara, bronzer, and a little lip. And it's kind of, it gives a nice polished look.
Yeah.
So again, feel like yourself. Don't cover yourself, but, enhance those little tricks.
So Danielle, before we go, because they're going to give me the countdown in a second, if people want to continue this conversation with you, again, I have you pinned, Hdamhel, you can find her on IG, but where else can people find you and what can you do for them?
That's kind of the best way to find me right now. And then we can go from there, whether it's email consultations, if it's a FaceTime thing. I love working one-on-one with people and helping them find what works for them, what they already have. They don't need to go out and buy a million things. I can show you through FaceTime, hey, these are my tools. How do I use these? So we can do kind of one-on-one lessons and set it up that way. So, but contact me through Instagram, through direct message, or through my email that I gave earlier, hdamhelxo@gmail.com. So,
Well, thank you.
Thank you for having me.
Oh my gosh. Thank you for your time and your energy and sharing all of your trade secrets with us. And I think this will be really helpful for people because, when you look good, you feel good. And that's what we're here to help with, to do for people in whatever way we can.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate the opportunity to chat with everyone. So,
all right.
Well, thank you.
All right, Danielle, love you. Thank you.
Love you too. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye, everyone. See ya.